Having a foreign language is a central skill set which is of immense value to you. And spending semesters abroad and getting immersed in a foreign culture and saying, look, these people are actually just like I am, although it's different languages and historical legal precedents, et cetera. So General Schwarzkopf had grown up being educated, in France and Germany and Iran, and was fluent in German and French, and had a tremendous empathy with Arab culture and a respect for it. You know, he made a huge point of bringing along the Saudi Minister of Defense as his co-equal. We must have had 2 or 3 major briefings to General Schwarzkopf in the field as a division commander. In every case, he brought his Saudi counterpart along. So I think that's just another implication of modern leadership. This is not just running a U.S. military fight, it's dealing with your allies effectively. When I see somebody in command, boy, you should see the commanders we've got now. I just said farewell to the 2nd Battalion, 30th Infantry. I'm honorary colonel of the regiment. You look at company commanders, battalion commanders, brigade commanders in the field now. They're the best people we ever had in uniform. I assume, as a general statement, if you're in command of a U.S. military formation, they've been working on you for a long time. You are hand-selected. You know what you're talking about. So obviously General Schwarzkopf brought credentials and experiences that we knew about, and it started off with an assumption that he knew what he was doing. But then, of course, day to day, it's not what you tell me, it's what you do. And by the way, I think the other thing General Schwarzkopf, to me, was extremely important was, at the end of the day, all of life in the military is acting like you're a good company commander. At some point, you got to say, who's in charge? Who are my direct subordinates? What's my mission? And sometimes that's lacking at senior levels. So the guy may have been a terrific company commander through brigade commander, and he's a 3 or 4 star general. You know, does he understand that he's still a company commander? He's got to issue a plan, counsel subordinates, energize them, and Schwarzkopf understood that. So, I mean, I saw General Schwarzkopf 24 times in 5 months as a division commander, fairly far down in his fighting formation, which was Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Allied, et cetera. But he was a force. He was the squad leader. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I learned a lot from him. I had tremendous trust in him. I was grateful that we had, I was grateful for, among other things, his personal courage, that he was willing to take on. There was so much angst and fear and paranoia looking at this gigantic Iraqi force with thousands of tanks and thousands of BIMPs and thousands of artillery pieces, and the background chatter was all, it's going to be the bloodiest day in the U.S. Army since Normandy. And I heard senior officers going down that route. They're going to slaughter us with chemical weapons and on and on. And a bunch of us knew better. There was no question. Benny P. and I and others knew that was nonsense. We were going to take these people apart. But at the top of the command structure, we had a joint commander who communicated clearly, we can do this, and then thought way above the obvious problem of banging our way through the fire trenches of Kuwait to get in to seize the capital, and instead say, we're going to cut the entire Iraqi military off and do this with a minimum loss of U.S. life, which is exactly what he brought to the battle equation. One of the best things you can, seem to me, tell a cadet or a captain is go read the Army Times and over the last 5 years and study intently policies and challenges and who the likely enemies are and how the fight in Afghanistan and Iraq are going. And once you've thoroughly imbued yourself with all those facts, forget it. The challenges you will face 5 years from now will come out of nowhere. We're not going to do another Afghanistan. There won't be another Operation Iraqi Freedom. It'll be something quite different and challenging. So the basic skill sets you practice are vitally important. not just the end game. So right now, if you talk to an Army battalion commander, Marine battalion commander, about how you conduct operations in Afghanistan, they're masters of their profession. The challenge is going to be when we give you a totally new template to operate on. So education, broadly, practicing the building block techniques of being a military officer. Do you understand how to run maintenance? If you can't do maintenance inside your battalion, captain, then you're not prepared to run this organization. Do you understand logistics, communications, gunnery skills? Do you have a foreign language and keep it up to date? Do you continue reading military history or political history or economic history during your time as an officer? Get ready, because the next war, the next challenge won't look anything like what you read in the Army Times. You know, the thing that ought to get mentioned is not an aspect of being a military officer, but as a precondition. And it's something that 21-year-old cadets don't have to worry about, and that's be in good physical condition. If you're not prepared to operate with 3.5 hours sleep while filthy, exhausted, frozen, or blowtorch hot, and climb up the side of mountains, and you can't do this stuff. You get completely befuddled after a couple of days. So you got to remind yourself of that when you get to be beyond company command. Look, if you want to stay in this business, keep yourself in physically good shape. And by the way, if you want to be a major or above, you'd better be able to write English clearly and quickly. So if you can't communicate in writing and verbally, you're also, so these are building blocks. They don't have to have anything to do with, is it going to be a coin battle, or is it going to be CT operations, or high intensity battle against the North Koreans? They're building blocks. And now, if we're talking about a West Point graduating class, thank God they come to the table with high character, with self-discipline, with intellectual skills, and they've learned how to work in groups and trust each other. So they're starting off way up on the shelf, and then they got to get out there and learn the specific skills for their military specialty. The bottom line is just be yourself. Act like if you're a tactical officer, you got here because you were a model of leadership capability in your professional field, and do that. Occasionally I get nervous, and I'm talking looking back over 45 years. Occasionally I get nervous about how highly tuned we get West Point, cadet life, etc. A lot of that's good. If you can't keep your hair cut, if you can't keep your shoes shined, if you can't get your brass on correctly, there's something sloppy about the unit. But I do want us to remind ourselves to have West Point operate as much as we can like the elite formations of the U.S. Army that our graduates will soon join. So if you want a template, go look at 1st or 2nd Battalion, 30th Infantry. Where I just spent a day with 2nd and the 30th. Maybe 40% of them are privates in the Army that have never been deployed. 60% of them are on their 2nd combat tour or greater. One of them's on his 6th combat tour. They're headed back in Afghanistan in October. The night before I went to talk to them at their gala dinner, the night before I joined them, they'd done a 25-mile combat march all night with all equipment, to include the 27 attached women for female engagement teams, and all the women, I might add, made the march successfully. So from the battalion commander on down, the battalion commander is one of these classic, experienced, courageous, sensible, physically fit, uplifting people. This is the best Army we ever saw. That's what our cadets need to model themselves after. Understand that Army, not where they're fighting, Afghanistan, Iraq, but the caliber of the leadership and the climate of the Army is simply unbelievable. One thing to remind yourself is you're not there as a 3rd lieutenant. You're not there as a candidate officer, as a subaltern in training. You're not in a presence. You're actually legally and practically in command. And as you walk into the platoon the first day, you've already got more military training, probably, than anyone in the platoon. So the skill sets are there for you to understand what you're doing. Now, having said that, as you walk into the platoon, you got a 30-year-old platoon sergeant with 4 combat tours. He's got to tutor you, and you'll gain enormously from listening to the sergeants of the Army. Plus, they're such fun to be around, and they want you to succeed. But don't forget, you're actually in charge. And the reason we want you there is because we got confidence of your character and your personal courage. And because you're not tired and beaten down, your hamstring isn't broken, and you're bringing energy and new life to the platoon. And those privates are going to all look up to you. You know, they're saying, God, this young woman or man just came out of West Point, a year of training, and they're people of integrity, and they're going to admire you when you walk in the door. So anyway, you're not there in sufferance of the older NCOs, and that's not how they're going to deal with you. That battalion sergeant major is going to look at you as somebody that's key to their battle effectiveness. I used to joke and say I would have gone armor. I spent 3 combat tours crawling around the mud, throwing hand grenades at people and shooting it out at 20 feet range, and then I discovered the M1 tank and the Bradley fighting vehicle. But that's sort of tongue-in-cheek. I guess what I'd say is that I was very fortunate in that my entire career I went from one job to another that prepared me for the next position. So when I got to be a company commander, I was company commander for a couple of months as a second lieutenant. I didn't know what I was doing. Peacetime garrison 82nd Airborne. When I finally commanded a company in combat, I was on my 3rd combat tour. I've been wounded twice. I was 25 years old. I flat knew what I was doing. I understood how to use artillery and mortars and Army aviation and air power and operational security. And so most of my career I went from one job to another where I'd spent so much time getting prepared I really knew what I was doing. I think that's the key to happiness in life, is find out what you're good at or like doing and keep working at it real hard. If you get thrown into a field where you're completely out of the blue, it's hard to be effective at first. It's a lot of fun if you actually know what you're doing as you step into these new jobs. You look at all these cadets, it's just enormously encouraging to me to see the caliber. We have 15,000 people apply for each one of these 1,000 slots. 800 of them make it through. Then we give them another year of intensive training. They are some of the most effective young people in America. And then we give them immense responsibilities right off the bat. I think one of the challenges of these young West Pointers is don't forget how good you are. And that the people you're dealing with, they don't want you to succeed. Their lives are dependent upon you being effective. So get out there and help defend us.